Hi, this is Burgundy, and this will be my first book review. I am going to be steadily reading a lot of books over the next few months, largely speculative fiction, meaning fantasy and sci-fi, and to urge that I actually do this reading and sit and think about what I read. I will be doing book reviews of them. So, the first review in this process is this book, Flotsam by R.J. Theodore. I want to first start off by saying that I absolutely loved this. It's action-packed, very fast-paced. It's a fun read. It's space pirates and aliens, basically. Well, sort of space pirates. They're not quite as cool as pirates, but they do the same basic thing as pirates. And I really enjoyed the pacing of this, first of all. Like, to start off with the positives. It got my attention from the start. From the get-go, I was wondering what was going on. And then, bam! This huge thing was going on, like, within the first 20 pages. And I wanted to know why the bad guys were trying to kill the main character and her crew. And I must say, like, throughout the whole book, I really could feel for Talus and her point of view, Talus being the main character. Because the author sticks to a third-person limited point of view, that means I only knew what Talus knew. There was no extra narrative of information that would tip me off in knowing what was going to happen next. And I think for the purposes of this book, the third-person limited perspective really works because of the fact that when stuff happens, you don't expect it as any more than Talus does. And you learn things at the same time as Talus. And so, on a pacing and narration level, I really enjoyed this. And it was just, in general, a really fun read. Now, on more specific things, because I do have specific thoughts about things. First, the aliens. I like the aliens that are in this. The first and most important thing about them is their pronoun system, which is amazing. So most stories, societies, pronouns are based on some construct of gender, if applicable. But the aliens, their pronoun system is based on class, which, wow, on a world-building level, that is amazing. And the really interesting thing is there are different categories of pronouns. There's like at least 4. I think the number was 9. I'm gonna go with at least 4. And each category has at least 50 different pronoun sets. 50! As Talus says in the book, dear gods, 50? I agree. Same mood. As a non-binary person who uses neopronouns, same. Dear gods, 50. That's a lot. And it's just really interesting. And I liked that there was a non-binary character because of the aliens, or multiple non-binary characters, technically, or what we would perceive as non-binary when, for the aliens, there was no clear construct of gender with them. I also, on further queer representation, I like that one of the crew, Tisker, it's not really a spoiler, it's just a thing, somewhere within the first half of the book, I think first third, it's mentioned that he's gay. With some great phrasing, too. The phrase interactive body parts is used, and that's fantastic. I love it. Like, I knew exactly what the author meant, and I think that phrasing is hilarious. Interactive body part. As it currently stands at the end of this book, him being gay has nothing to do with the plot. And that's fine. That's exactly how it should be for a story that is not romance-based. But I don't think this information should have been left out. I very much believe that if the author wants someone's orientation to be canon within the text of the book, then it needs to be canon within the text of the book. And none of that tweeting about it 7 years later idiocy. Yes, I am throwing shade at a very famous author right now. I like and appreciate that the author, R.J. Theodore, took a whole sentence to dedicate to, it might have been 2 sentences, a whole sentence dedicated to mentioning that Tisker is gay. Not quite that language, but that's what it meant. It has no further bearing on the plot, and that's how it should be. That's, like, it was handled and addressed exactly the way it should have been. The story itself is really intriguing, and I really like that it is both sci-fi and fantasy. It's space pirates, aliens, and alchemy. And I am a huge lover of fantasy and sci-fi to a bit lesser extent, because I love me magic and dragons. And while there's no dragons in this, there's still magic in the form of alchemy. And also, space operas are great too, and this is definitely a milder version of a space opera right now. At least for now. It's only the first book, and the second one hasn't even been done, like, being edited yet. So, with all that said, while I absolutely loved reading this, I do have some complaints, and some of it is more of a trope thing, because I'm a huge trope fan. I like analyzing tropes. And the first one is going back to the aliens for a moment. And this isn't a fault with the book, it is a fault with this prevalence within sci-fi. And that is, why are only the aliens non-binary, or presented that way, or why are only the aliens being given the neo-pronouns treatment? Why can't we have humans like that? Why can't we have humans with neo-pronouns? Why can't we have humans who are non-binary? Why can't we have human civilizations that deconstruct gender? Or, in this case, completely throw gender out the window and all pronouns are based on class, which is amazing. That's fantastic world building. And I hope that within the next 2 books there is a non-binary human, but I don't have any reason, as it currently stands, to believe that there will be. But the fact that the author is able to actually address the matter of Tisker's homosexuality properly at least gives me cause to believe that perhaps there will be a human who is non-binary and or uses typical non-binary pronouns like they, z, etc. And on the world building, my next complaint, criticism, complaint, kind of the same thing, not gonna lie, but it's mostly criticism. And I like the world that is built up, but I strongly advise that if you're going to read this, you need to read the glossary at the end of the book first. There's no spoilers in it. Trust me, there's no spoilers. I happen to be the type of person who will flip through the glossary quickly and be like, oh, cool, words that I probably need to know. And I happen to skim a couple words, like glow pumpkin, that ended up being really helpful. But reading the glossary and is basically like, if you want to know what Talus is talking about, you need to read the glossary first, and that's really annoying and inconvenient. And I like that there is a glossary, to be clear. Glossaries are important, especially within sci-fi and fantasy. Glossaries should not be required reading in order to understand what the main character is talking about. I believe that world building should be under the assumption that you haven't read the glossary. And the glossary is a tool for readers to go back and remind themselves what something is. And all of these, like, for example, glow pumpkins. Well, to be fair, is a pretty self-explanatory name. A one-sentence description of what a glow pumpkin is would have been nice. That wasn't in the glossary. Fairly early on, somewhere within the first 20 pages, there is mentioning of the 5 races / species of Peridot, however you want to pronounce it. And they have pretty standard looking names, or words, mostly. And it did not occur to me immediately that these words were actually the names for the species that inhabit this world, because they don't look like species names. And that's not to say that that you can't use words like bone or vein as names for a species. That's totally fine. But it would have been nice to have a sentence or two elaborate, like within the first introduction of these names, these words, there was a sentence or two elaborating what they were. Because otherwise it was some bodies of bone and vein and etc. were amongst the flotsam. What does that mean? I don't understand what that means. And there's not really much clarification until later. Furthermore, it would have been nice to know before the 60-page-ish marker that one of the main characters, Doug, is not human. He is a humanoid, but he is not human. He has pointed ears and feather hair, and I understand that there was a lot going on that, taking a minute to mention these things might have killed the flow a little bit, but also the flow could have been adjusted just slightly, to mention that Doug isn't human. At least that would have been nice to know, like before the 60-page marker, preferably like when he was first introduced, because and maybe I just missed it. That's possible. In which case, then ignore this. But as it stands, I don't think I did miss it, and it just would have been nice to on a world building level. The glossary should not be required reading. It should be a tool for what has already been described, and things don't have to be described in elaborate Tolkien-esque detail. That's silly. A sentence or two is fine. Especially with the pacing of the story, a sentence or two is fine and does not impede the flow. What else? I have a little notebook here with all of my thoughts. Ooh, Hancock, the one of the antagonists of the story. You meet him pretty quickly, and you're not supposed to like him. And the author does a great job of making sure that you don't like him. Like he's very easily hateable. I can totally understand why Talus just hates him. I can understand why literally everyone on the crew hates him. I mean, he does try to like kill them within the first 40 pages. And he's racist. Yeah, he's a major racist asshole. And I don't mind the idea of him being redeemed. Like, there is, by the end of this first book, by the end of this book, there is the narrative threads lined up, beginning the potential for him to have a redemption arc. And I'm fine with that. I like a good redemption arc. But a point in the story is that Talus and Hancock used to be a thing, and Talus hates him and doesn't want anything to do with him on that level, largely because he's a racist asshole. And as it currently stands, there's narrative implication that the direction of his redemption arc will at some point result in the two, Talus at least, having feelings for each other again. I mean, I'm pretty certain Hancock does still have feelings for her. I think it's actually mentioned or implied at some point in the text. But Talus just hates him, and rightfully so. He's a scumbag. Everyone wants to kill him. All of the protagonists want to kill him. And, yeah. I want to kill him, and I am a pacifist, and I want to kill him. But I am strongly opposed to the idea that these two get back together. Strictly because, like, no, he's a racist asshole. And also, like, no. 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 Now, he is bad. He is on the antagonistic side that, like, is in favor of, like, genocide. Whether he himself has done this genocide is a little up for debate, but he is affiliated with these people. Someone of that caliber of awfulness on a narrative level should not be getting the girl, basically. Should not, like, yes, I'm in favor of him having a redemption arc. But I really think that the best way for his redemption arc to happen is for him to die. If in the process Talus is like, you know, I'm starting to have feelings for you again because you're not a racist asshole anymore, or fine, whatever, he should die. He even at the end of a redemption arc, he needs to die. That, or he sacrifices himself in some way that dharmically compensates for what he's been supporting. Even if that doesn't result in death, like maybe he loses both of his legs or something, or something major has to be given up. And I really think, as it currently stands, that the major thing he should give up is his life, because he's a racist asshole who's been on the side of these assholes supporting genocide. Let's see what else. No, I think I had one other thing to talk about. No, I think that's it. Overall, it was a really fun read. This book right here, Flotsam by R.J. Theodore. I am strongly looking forward to reading Salvage, the second one. And low-key, if one of the books is not entitled Jetsam, because Flotsam and Jetsam, I'm going to be disappointed. Like, it's not the end of the world, but still. I like this. I'm pretty certain this was drawn by R.J. Theodore themselves. But either way, I like it. I like the little drawings in this that start each chapter. Let's see. There's a little airship at the beginning of every chapter, and I think that's cute. And I believe, yeah, the front credits state that the drawings in this are by R.J. Theodore, and good job. I like them. Keep it up. Not really related to the content of the story itself, this small publishing press that released this book last year, the copyright section is kind of funny. Let's see, where is it? No part of this publication may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic, mechanical, magical, photocopying, or otherwise. And I just think that little inclusion of magical is funny. And I appreciate that. Oh, and at the end, it says lawyerly catawampus. And I think that's funny too. So, anyways, you should either buy this book off of Barnes & Noble, because don't support Amazon. Please don't support Amazon if you can avoid it. If you can reasonably avoid it, please don't support Amazon. Buy this off of Barnes & Noble or an independent bookstore, or if you happen to find it in your bookstore, buy it there. But you should buy this book. It's a lot of fun and action-packed, and it starts off with a bit of a bang and doesn't really stop. There's some slow points, like slow-ish, but yeah, I really enjoyed this. Hope y'all have a good day, and will be reviewing The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in the Ship of Her Own Making next sometime. Bye!